Welcome to OverBoost 55. OverBoost is a podcast interview series featuring discussions with speedrunners about their history in speedrunning and gaming and the runs they're passionate about. I am your host, PMC Trilogy, and with me today is Mike Wave. Mike, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Now, the one of the things I always like to do at the top is I want to get like the burning news out of the way, because I feel like that's always the best stuff to talk about. And I feel like with you right now, there's two things that jump to my mind. The first thing, of course, is that you are on the schedule for SGDQ 2021. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And specifically, now you're a veteran. You're no stranger to GDQs. You've done two runs that I could find before for mainline events.
Yeah.
But of course, you're going to be doing Mass Effect 2, which is, as far as I could tell, never been done at a mainline GDQ event before. And so I wanted to get from you a sales pitch. If someone is listening to this interview, either live or after the fact, why should they make time to watch Mass Effect 2 at SGDQ 2021?
Well, Mass Effect 2 is, like, in my opinion, one of the best games ever made. It's just a great, fun game to watch. Great story. Even though we're going to be, like, skipping all the dialogue in the run, like, really, really fast. Mm-hmm. It's just there's a lot of really cool skips, a lot of really cool combat stuff that we do. Just a lot of funny moments because we're going to be using a mod in the run called the Speedrunning Mod.
Okay.
Very clever title. But we're allowed to use it for speedruns. And
community decision, right?
Yeah. It automatically skips all the pre-rendered cutscenes in the game, and you can't actually. So when you skip the pre-rendered cutscenes in the game, it makes a lot of stuff look really, really weird. It's gonna be a thing you don't see very often. It's gonna make for a really entertaining run, I think.
Yeah, no, I had what was fun too, and I'll have some more questions about Mass Effect 2 later and Mass Effect generally, but. Another piece of burning news was I caught some of your stream last night before I went to bed. I'm on the East Coast, so of course I didn't watch it to the end. But when I woke up this morning and I said I got to do my note taking, finish up my last points for the interview, I went and checked your Twitch channel and noticed at that time that you actually met your goal by the end of the stream, which is really cool. Yeah, so you were shooting for a 106, so I ended up watching that 106 run. So I saw some of what you were talking about with the way you're skipping the cutscenes.
The first half of that run did not go as well as it could have. I was getting really frustrated, but then I clutched it in the second half, and I was super ecstatic by the end.
It's such a classic PB VOD, because as you mentioned before we started, I've done a few of these, and it's always so much fun to watch it where they're like, I'm not gonna make my goal, like this isn't good, this is awful, and like we're like 40 minutes into the run and you're still saying that.
The classic, this run sucks. It's not a world record run unless the runner like says that at some point.
Now the other thing I did want to ask before we get to is kind of your background in history. You mentioned a little bit of why you think Mass Effect 2. Now of course that is original Mass Effect 2, the original Mass Effect 2,
not Legendary Edition, right? For those wondering,
which just came out, and so I looked at the leaderboard. I noticed the leaderboard for Legendary Edition is still completely empty.
Yeah,
is that something that you're working on? Is it speedrun viable? Like, is it good? Like, as a Mass Effect fan,
it's great.
Okay,
casually, it's wonderful. Mass Effect 1, the remaster, I think is the best way to casually play the game. It does have some performance issues. I noticed like some stuttering that happened, but it looks gorgeous. It looks like an updated game for 2021. It's a classic. Like you have to play it at some point. I feel like if you're like an action like RPG type fan, But yeah, in 2 and 3 ran perfectly. Unfortunately, Mass Effect 2 Legendary Edition. The reason we don't run it is because all the skips got patched out. So
no.
Yeah, it was the morning that Legendary Edition dropped. Like all of us were in a Discord call actually, and we were going through mostly 1 and 2, going like, all right, does this still work? Does this still work? And with 2, it was just like us getting sadder and sadder as we realized, oh no, it's nothing works. There are some really good quality of life changes they made. Like the menuing is a lot better in Legendary Edition. They made a bunch of minor stuff that only runners would really notice. So applaud to them for that. And I think the character models and stuff all do look better. Again, I think casually, Legendary Edition is definitely the way to go. If you've never played the game before, definitely go Legendary Edition. But for speedrunning, I'm going to probably just stick with OG for the time being.
Now, that's for 2 in particular because of the patching out stuff. I think I saw you do run 1. Is 1 legendary going to be feasible? Or
it's more so than 2. There's actually several out of bounds we've already found for Mass Effect 1 Legendary Edition. Yeah, one of them I found, not the humble brag or anything like that.
No, please.
I was up till like 5 in the morning at one point, and because I was just like I wanted to lab it, and I ended up finding a way to go out of bounds, and I'm like, oh, could we do the out of bounds here like we do in the OG? And it worked, and I'm like, ooh. Okay, maybe, but even then, like the problem is, like, they did not make the cutscenes skippable still in the Legendary Edition, which I'm really disappointed by. Because I feel even if they had patched out all the skips, if they had just given us skippable cutscenes, it'd be fine. Like it'd probably be faster.
Right? Yeah, 100%.
Just because of that.
And it's a game that's so replayable too. That's what drives me up a wall. Is that like you would think in a game where you're supposed to replay it and do different things. And...
because like it's an RPG. You're gonna want to try different runs with different builds, and like there's a morality system. And like one run you might want to be a good guy, and then the second run you might want to be a complete jerk, like complete sociopath. You know?
Yeah. No, I have I've never speedrun the games, but. Back in 2012, I was unemployed for like 3 months, and I did, 2 full game trilogy runs of it, just casually, of course. And so that was, I haven't touched them since, but Legendary's made me think about it, and I'm glad to hear that at least
1 and 2 hold up really, really well. 3, I have my qualms with, but it's still a good game, I think.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun playing 3. I mean, of course, there's a whole Mass Effect 3 discourse is a minefield for sure.
Man. I don't know. Like I had a feeling that was gonna like roar back.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised we haven't heard more about it, specifically Mass Effect 3.
I think most people are just reminiscing about 1 and 2, like the very good games. Like, yeah, these are awesome. I love these characters, and then they haven't gotten to 3 yet. So
in due time, they'll get there. I have faith. Well, in that case, let's go. Speaking of nostalgia. One of the things I like to track here, we're going to spend some time tracking, is how you got into gaming and speedrunning. Yeah. So let's go back to the beginning. What is your origin story with video gaming? Who introduces it to you? How did you first get into it?
So I first played, I think I was like 4 or 5 years old. My parents got me an N64 for Christmas. I asked for a bike, but they didn't want to give me one. Right? I don't know if they had enough money for one. I don't know which one cost more, a bike or an N64 back in like 97, 98 or whatever. And so I got an N64 with Super Mario 64, and the rest is kind of history after that. And I think my parents regretted that because now, that changed everything,
So that's interesting. So that's a classic story, right? That the holiday gift or something that you get from. From your parents. Did your family ever get into it with you? That's something that's really 50-50, I find. Like sometimes people's parents are right in there with them, and sometimes they don't understand the language.
No, they're definitely not there. My dad played a lot of NES back in the day, but definitely not as much as I have. Like they know their Marios, their Zeldas, their Pokemons and stuff like that, but anything beyond that is just like unknown territory,
So, going forward from there, what were some of the games? You mentioned Super Mario 64 was a big game. I don't want to bully the N64, so I'm not going to make any comments about the size of its library. But what were some other big games for you?
Majora's Mask. The first time I played that game back when it came out, I was a stupid kid, so I didn't know what to do. But then I went back to it, like I think 4 or 5 years later, and I'm like, oh wow, this is like one of the best games I've ever played. A lot of Pokemon Red and Blue. Again, I was kind of dumb back when that came out. I think Mario was like the only game back then that like really clicked with me because it's so simple. It's just like get the star. Okay, yeah. I'm trying to think of other ones like Wind Waker, Metroid Prime, still one of my all-time favorite games.
So it sounds like you were sticking with Nintendo, right? Because you just moved into GameCube there, and not Game Boy, of course, with Pokemon.
Yeah, so that was up until GameCube. GameCube, I was like really big into. I think it's probably like one of my, even though the library, I think for GameCube is still like not the greatest.
Mhm.
Like it's still like the console I have the most fond memories of, along with the PS2, probably. Even though I never really got around to playing like the best PS2 games until I was older, like MGS2, MGS3. I played a little bit of Silent Hill 2.
Mhm.
Like I didn't play that until I was like way older.
Yeah.
But and then I think around the mid 2000s, I transferred over to PC gaming, and nothing has been the same since, because I find it so hard to play with a controller now. I at some point just got so used to keyboard and mouse. Like literally any game I run now, I go like, okay, what are the keyboard and mouse controls like? Because I'm not playing this on a controller.
No, absolutely. It's and especially with more and more Japanese games coming to PC.
Yeah,
it's always so interesting to see which ones. Some of them will be like, hey, they think of like Daemon X Machina has like a good keyboard scheme, or Full Metal Chaos, or a Full Metal. Yeah. Now, what am I thinking of? The Wolf game. I forget the name. Anyway, but then you have like
Okami?
Yakuza. What's up?
Okami, is that the one you're thinking
No.
of?
The one that was it was originally an Xbox game, and then Devolver Digital brought it over.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's fine. It's like a mecha game. You play as the president, and it's like very corny.
Is that the FromSoft game?
Yes, the FromSoft game.
Yeah. Man, I know what you're talking about. I don't know the name of it though.
But to contrast, there's also Yakuza, right? When you boot up Yakuza game on PC, it says real Yakuza use a gamepad.
Wait, does it really?
Oh yeah, it does.
I've not gotten around to playing. I have Yakuza 0 and stuff on PC, but I haven't gotten around to booting it up yet.
Yeah, I mean, they're great games. I love them. I've played a bunch of them, but they definitely try to bully you. I don't know if they have keyboard controls. I think they do, because I think
they have to.
Yeah,
they have to at some, because like there's no way they like tested that without a keyboard and mouse. I don't know.
The reason I say that is because I think there is, and won't be surprising to you, there is I think one game where mashing is faster if you do it both gamepad and keyboard at the same time.
It accepts like both inputs at the same time or something like that.
So
interesting. Because most games, it's like as soon as you press like one button on the controller, it'll like transfer over completely to the controller, and like you can't really accept both the inputs.
So a milestone question that I like to get a sense of, and I think you might have I could probably infer what the answer to this is going to be, but one thing that's interesting is at some point gaming stops being something that we get as gifts, like the N64 or whatever, and it's something that we take ownership of as a hobby. And so I like to get a sense of, can you identify maybe an event or a purchase where that happened for you? Just giving examples, like when I was 15, I worked a summer job and bought my first PC. That's really when I got into PC gaming myself.
Oh man,
do you have anything like that?
The only example I can really think of is, Mass Effect 1 and 2 were actually two of them. Like, I remember buying those games on my Xbox 360. I still have my collector's edition of Mass Effect 2 lying around in a drawer somewhere. I remember the day I got it from Best Buy, and I'm trying to think. I have a Resident Evil 4 GameCube copy still that I fondly hold on to. My Metroid Prime copy, I bought that. I still hold on to it. I don't have the case anymore, but it is a 1.0 copy. If I ever wanted to run that game, I could. And yeah. I remember once I used my mom's credit card to buy Dragon Age Origins, which I only played once. And
with permission?
That was a game I really... no. I apologize for it, but
Is there a story behind what happened to the Metroid Prime case, or is...
I see Pharaoh in chat. Pharaoh is a god tier RE4 runner as well. No, I think I bought one of those like big cases that you can store like 40 GameCube discs in, with like the sliding, like I don't know what you call it, like they have like the plastic hinges and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And mine's kind of greasy, but I still have like a bunch of old GameCube games in there. And I think at some point I was like a dumb kid. I was like, I'll just put all my games in here. This is the smart thing. I didn't think to myself as a kid, like 15 years from now, having this disc with the original case and all that is going to be like kind of valuable to have. I just thought, no, I just want the disc. The game's the only thing that matters, that
is an interesting thing though, because like I sold off a lot of my childhood collection towards the end of my college days, and to some extent I'm kind of glad I did that, because we move a lot. If you're moving, lugging around a physical collection is a real pain in the butt.
I gave away like half my GameCube games at some point, I think, and I think one of them was Pikmin 1, which I'm kind of sad about still.
Yeah. So no, I definitely hear that though. I've been, this is a whole nother discussion about consoles, but I've been investing in a lot of optical drive emulators, which are sort of the cousin to flash carts, and it's been worth it. I've been playing a lot of the games we've been talking about. Also, I did want to ask though, we're mentioning things that you hung on to in terms of games. The childhood N64 and GameCube, did they survive the years?
No, I think my mom gave them away at some point. I have my original Wii still that I got for Christmas. I still have that. So luckily Nintendo put like backwards compatibility on that. That was back when they were making smarter decisions, I think.
For sure.
So if I ever wanted to boot up those games, I still could with my trusty old Wii, but I wish I had my N64 still. But yeah, I don't know if it would have survived though.
No, that's extremely fair. It would have been hard for me as well, jumping around the Northeast. All right. We're going to be talking mostly about single player games, Mass Effect, Resident Evil, etc. But I do also like to get a look into what sort of multiplayer games you enjoy and have enjoyed over the years, right? Because the time span we're talking about covers a lot of years. Couch co-op, dedicated servers on PC, early Xbox Live. What kind of stuff have you been into?
There's a long list. The first games I remember playing a lot back in the day was probably Halo 2. After that, I moved away from consoles. I did play a lot of Gears of War 1 multiplayer back in the day. That multiplayer was super jank, though. Like the latency in that game is like historic, I think. But I moved up to PC in the mid 2000s. I played a lot of PCs. I still have memories of me playing CS in LAN houses. My family's Brazilian, so whenever I went to Brazil, they have like these LAN cafes all over the place. And my parents would just leave me there, and I would just like sit on a computer and play Warcraft 3 and CS 1.6 for like.
Oh, it was 1.6. Okay,
1.6 for like 6 or 7 hours. And I still have a lot of fond memories of like. I think Warcraft 3 is like probably like one of my fondest games because I played that throughout my whole childhood. And CS 1.6, I eventually moved to Source. But that's where I got really used to mouse and keyboard because like I just like couldn't go back after that. I think.
Absolutely. When it came to doing things like 1.6 and Warcraft 3, what's great about those scenes in particular, because I would say I played more 1.6 than Warcraft 3, but I played a lot of both of those. What I played more of than Warcraft 3 was original Dota, and so I'm curious if you played any mods. I mean, Warcraft 3 did.
The mod for Warcraft 3?
Yeah.
So, I played a little bit of it. MOBAs I was never super big on, unfortunately. I still have memories of like wanting to get into it, and then people were so toxic. I'm like, okay, this sucks.
Folks, it was toxic from the start. Let me tell you.
A lot of people don't know that. Like from the very get-go, if you made like one mistake, you'd have like I was like a kid. I'd have like a 30-year-old man like screaming at me and stuff like that.
I told this the last guest I had on was Heinke, who's also very much into RTSs still. And I had to explain that we had a tool that would let us kick people if they were trying to download Dota in the Warcraft 3 custom map browser, because if you were actually a Dota player, you would have gotten it from www.getdota.com. You were clearly a noob. Downloading
had to download the map in the game.
So we would play a game where we would say, hey, if we saw someone download, we'd be like Squirtle or Charmander, and if they said Charmander, we would kick him right away, and if they said Squirtle, we would kick him at 99%. So it was toxic right from the start. It was great.
Oh man.
What about after Gears? What kind of anything after that? Like because at some point we get more into like matchmaking and stuff, like the more modern era of internet gaming.
Well. There was still TF2. TF2 is probably one of my most played games of all time still. I think with my 2 Steam accounts combined, I have like 2,500 hours in that game.
Nice.
So that was a big one after CS. Matchmaking wise, today the multiplayer game I played the most in the modern era is probably either Overwatch or DBD. like Dead by
Okay.
Daylight. I have like 2,000 hours in that game. Overwatch, I probably have like 1,000 hours, and I think I got the low GM once in that game.
Cool. No, I mean,
Yeah, I like a lot of FPSs. So
no, I'm right there with you. I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't played DVD, but I played Overwatch for a bit when that came out. Do you have any favorite roles in Overwatch? What like if you can pick anything, what would you pick?
I mostly played support.
Okay.
Because I always liked playing the support role, kind of, especially because it was I felt like I was being the responsible one, because like all the kids just wanted to play DPS or whatever. Like, oh yeah, I want to be the all-star dude, DPS dude, and I'm just like, I'm gonna take the job nobody wants to do and like just be good at it, and then like I'll never have to wait in queue or anything like that.
Right.
Because I'm just like
right.
the most desired player,
Yeah. No, that's.
Oh, I forgot to mention, I did play a lot of WoW. Warcraft 3, I transferred over to WoW. So WoW might very well be the game I have the most amount of hours in out of any game. Like, I have lost track. I have like 2 different accounts that I probably put 4 or 5 years of play into.
Has that been a game that you've always been playing, like the retail version? Did you get in any private servers? Have you played Classic?
I played private servers for a little bit.
Okay.
I mostly played from Classic or like vanilla, like
Yes.
OG, up to RAF. I stopped playing around the end of RAF because I was getting burnt out.
Sure.
And then a few years later, I was like, I kind of want to get back into this, but I don't want to play retail because I don't want to have to learn all this new stuff. And I just want like, all right, I'm just gonna play on this like private server, and then I got to level 30, and I just kept getting ganked over and over again, and I'm like, oh man, this kind of sucks again. Because like when you're hopping into a private server, you got to understand you're hopping into like a community that is like very tightly knit, that people have been put thousands of hours into. That's why it's always tragic to hear those stories of like, oh, this private server got shut down, because it's like it may not seem like all that much on the surface, but like this is like a very tight knit community that have probably sunk thousands of hours into these characters, and it's just like just gone like that.
Yeah, that's a strong observation of I think a time that has sort of passed us, because the way you're describing private servers, which I think is accurate, is like the same way I feel about the era of dedicated servers, with Steam games, because I had a Counter-Strike 1.6 server that I would go to every evening for like 1 year of high school.
It was exactly like TF2 back when that was like mostly dedicated servers. Like you had that favorites list, and you're just like, yeah, this is like the servers I always go into. There's always like 2 guys I know in the server, and like we just hang out, talk, and stuff like that, and just while we're just like dicking around and stuff. And it's like, yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, no, it's way harder to have that, because I mean, you can play with friends, but you have to know those friends first, right? Or you just get queued up.
Because the main problem is like the matchmaking system has kind of taken over. It's like, man, I kind of long for the days of dedicated servers again, because it's like in dedicated servers, it's like you look at the list and you're like, okay, I want to play this map and I want to play this mode. All right, here's the server like right here that you go to, and like that has everything you want. Now with matchmaking, it's like you press one button and it's like super simple, but then it goes like, oh, you're gonna be going to this map, and it's like a completely against your choice, and you're like, wait, this map sucks though, I don't want to play this map, and it's just like you're kind of forced to,
right.
Yeah, or like, oh yeah, we're gonna like put you in this map and you're on like the losing team or whatever.
Right.
It's just like
all
so
sorts
many
of
things are
things
just out of your control, and like you don't really get to know anybody. I understand why they've moved towards it, because it is much simpler. Again, it's just like a normal person will look at a list of like dedicated servers and go like, what am I looking at? What is all this? You have to really introduce somebody to like how the server list works and stuff.
What are all these emoji in the server names? Like, what's going on?
Why am I in like a furry server? Why is everybody posting like furry pics?
That's just you all have custom sprays. Custom sprays is what it's about. You got to mark your territory.
Oh, yeah, the custom sprays. Oh yeah. I've seen a lot of a lot of spicy
seen things
ones.
I shouldn't have seen at that age in custom sprays in 1.6. Absolutely.
Yeah. Especially if they were like the GIF sprays too.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, all right, we're moving forward here. How about this is of course is always the most important question in a speedrun interview podcast, which is, how did you learn about speedrunning? When does that first enter in?
Okay. That one's kind of easy for me, actually. So I've always kind of known about speedrunning, but I never really paid too much attention to it until around 2015-ish. That's when it changed. I watched the 2 big early influences, I would say, were probably Trihex's Yoshi's Island speedrun for, I think it was SGDQ 2015. That was like the first GDQ run I watched in full. And I was like, this is awesome. Like that run was so sick.
Yeah, for sure.
Trihex, great commentator, really great personality. Really that's just such a cool run. Yoshi's Island. It's just super, super technical. Like a lot of really precise inputs, just really, really mechanical. And it's a game I played before, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is sick. And then the other one was probably Clint Stevens, OOT. I used to watch him run OOT 100% all the time. And that is a insane. Well, I think everybody knows OOT runs are just like nuts at this point.
That's interesting. I mean, of course, it's not too surprising. GDQ, of course, is the most common answer, for how people got into it. Certainly those two are great answers. But so you discovered it, you learned, you're aware of its play. As you said, you were aware of it even before you really, were riveted by those particular runs.
Yeah. I've watched Mario 64 runs before and stuff, but those are the two runs I still remember very much. Well, one was the run, and the other one is a streamer who I watched a lot back in the day.
So, what compels you to think about doing it yourself?
I was thinking at first I thought maybe oh man, this is gonna take so much time. This is so hard. And these guys have put thousands of hours into these games that they're playing, and it's oh man, it's it looks like such a steep entry level, it's such a steep learning curve, oh man, it's gonna be so hard to get into. But I decided to try when Breath of the Wild came out. That was the first game I tried speedrunning. I'm like, I should try this, and the speedrun looks really cool. They're finding new stuff every day, and that was my first attempt at really labbing a game. And I managed, I think my all dungeons run was top 10 back when I got it. I was pretty proud of that. I was like, oh yeah, I got my 2 hour 42-minute run or something like that.
Yeah, I'm seeing 2 hours 37 minutes is what I got down here on the RSRC profile.
Oh, okay, yeah, I don't even remember. But yeah, that was I think I learned a lot from that run, because that run, it was so much longer than most stuff I run nowadays. It just taught me to really be patient. But I never really got to the point where I was grinding that game. To the point where it's just you had to get used to resetting, because your time started to get really good. I was still at the point where it's I could just finish a run and I'm probably going to PB,
Well, too, you mentioned that it was around the time the game came out. I also noticed, of course, that you're doing it on the Wii U version there.
Yeah, that used to be the faster version. I was playing the disc version, though, which was slower. I think the slowest version. Back then, I think it was Wii U Digital was the fastest because the loads were just the most optimized for that. But then an optimization, this was long after I stopped running the game. An optimization patch came out for Switch, where they added the VR stuff I didn't even know about until then. And that made the loading screens on Switch 2 times as fast. So all of a sudden it's oh yeah, okay, Switch Digital is back. Or yeah, I think it's Switch Digital on the base console hard drive or whatever.
Right, and on the light. Now.
Yeah.
Interesting. Maybe the Pro soon, right? I'm sure all the Switch speedrunning communities.
I keep seeing people meme about that.
Are looking forward to a harder revision.
I think it's because the PS4 Pro came out, so now people are just going oh yeah, Nintendo's going to do that now, right?
Right, yeah, and then what the Xbox One X? No one can keep track of Xbox names.
I don't even know the names of them anymore. I don't know anyone who owns an Xbox anymore, even though I played a lot of my 360 back in the day.
Right. Oh yeah, I still have a 360. It's great. I love it. They're wonderful.
I got the old white one, that I think survived the red ring.
I can't go into it, but my original one was stolen, and then I made a few Frankenstein ones from broken ones, and then eventually I ended up with a special edition Resident Evil 5 Blood Red 360. Ooh. Pretty cool.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It's pretty good.
I like to see that.
Yeah, so that's nice. That's and thankfully, hopefully it'll still work, because it was a pretty late generation one compared to the ones that had the ring of death problems.
Yeah, you got to give it to Microsoft. Back then, the early, it was mostly I think the early wave of 360 consoles that were suffering from red rings. I went through 2 of them or something, but then after that, I never really had any problems. I think the later versions of the console ran pretty well, I think, from what I remember.
Yeah, especially once you get to the ones that have HDMI and stuff, not the original ones.
The black one and stuff like that. I remember, I think that was the E3 where they pulled an Oprah and we're everyone in this room gets a free 360. None of you guys watching on the live stream get it though. Sorry.
Indeed. Yeah.
All
right, so let's do some takes, some individual takes. We've established you got into speedrunning. You were riveted by these particular runs.
Yeah.
And so now I like to do kind of a just a list of different individual takes. We know that Breath of the Wild was your first game that you did runs of. You recorded and posted a leaderboard. Of all of the speedruns that you have done, what is your favorite speedrun?
That's like the nuke right there. I think Mass Effect 2 is steadily climbing it. I am really enjoying the run. I really wish there were more people to help me lab that game, because I literally found like a 10-second time save the other day where I'm like, okay, if somebody else was here, I would this would have been found. I feel like an idiot for not finding this. But man, I think even though I don't really run it anymore and I'm burnt out on it, I think like RE4 is still like up there at the top. I'm just like, I ran that game for 4 years or something, and like no game has lasted that long. Just I don't know. That's a tough one. I want to say RE4 for right now, but Mass Effect 2 is like the steady contender right now.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the thing is like
the kid going for the belt right now.
You are certainly not the first person that I've talked to who has simultaneously like loathed how burnt out they are on RE4, but also it's a great game and a great run.
Even more than I do. He has like 2 times as many hours in that game as I do, and I have like 1,800 hours in that game.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what about the flip side though? Is there a speedrun that is your least favorite that you did it, you tried it, decided it wasn't for you, probably not doing it again?
Oh, that's a tough one. I want to say, all right. So there is I'm not going to list this one as one, but I tried running RE8 recently. Did not really dig the speedrun at all.
Okay.
I'm beginning to realize that like the game needs some core mechanic to keep me interested, or else just like I'm just like not there, I want to say Nier Automata was a really cool run, but I sucked at it. I don't think the run's bad. I just sucked at it, and I just realized, okay, I don't think I'm going to be able to get really good at this, so I'm just going to like drop it. I wouldn't call it a bad run. It's like it's pretty cool once you're good at it. Like the top runs are really cool to watch. I tried running that only for a little bit just because I really liked the game. Besides, man, I don't know. I think RE2R also I did not care for after like a month of trying to run it. Because I was so hyped for that game. That was like the game I was the most hyped for before it came out. I was just like, oh my god, this is like this is gonna be like the next thing. I'm gonna like be all over this game. And I loved it casually, but I tried to run it and I just like the more and more I played it, the more I'm just like, I don't know. I was kind of disappointed. I'm just like, I don't know about this game as a run.
Yeah, what's really interesting? The thing that struck me looking at your profile page, and also of course, I watched your GDQ performance for Resident Evil 3 remake.
Yeah,
it seemed like the consensus from some of the people that I had listened to, watched to, talked to was that people were warmer. I mean, some people got burnt out on Resident Evil 2 remake by playing it a lot, of course, but that there was more of a buzz around that than there was the Resident Evil 3 remake, where a lot of people had complaints. But it seems like you ended up liking 3 more.
Yeah, I liked it a lot more. The main reason was the dodging mechanic. The dodging mechanic added such a cool component. It was such a cool component to the game, I think, for speedrunning. Like every day that passed, we were finding new things you could do with the dodge. Like you could dodge here. Oh, did you know you can like do 2 dodges right here and like right before an enemy grabs you, and then like perfect dodge right? Like it's like so many cool things we were finding out. Like, oh, if you do this thing, it'll cancel your dodge. And I'm like, all right, RE2R never had this thing where it's just like this cool mechanic we found out about. Like if anything else, like RE2R just steadily got more boring for me, because it's just like once we found out the knife was broken in that game, like it all went downhill. It was like I was like trying to find like a cool strats to like kill the boss. It's like, oh, we can use the magnum right here, and then like use some acid rounds and like pistol shot, and then but then we found out the knife is broken on the higher frame rate, and then it's just like, oh, you just knife him. Just knife him. Oh yeah, just knife him. Just sit around and knife him. And I'm like, oh, this is so boring. Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes simplicity of an overpowered item in a speedrun can be nice, because it can smooth a rough edge that wouldn't otherwise be interesting to solve. But I'll definitely say, not having necessarily watched a lot of either I definitely loved, for example, like the one Nemesis fight where you're using the grenades and the shotgun, and that's just like a cool fight to watch. I remember, I think in the GDQ video, you managed to do it very well, and it's just riveting.
Yeah, like the Nemi fights have actually gotten even more complicated now. Like that is a run where like the boss fights are just getting more and more complicated. Like the third Nemesis fight specifically, there was a new strat found a few months ago where the current strat now that is like 10 seconds faster, where like we don't even let him run around on the wall and stuff, is 10 seconds faster, but it is so much harder. Like your execution has to be like on point. Like you cannot miss any shots. Like you cannot get staggered here. Like you have to be swapping your ammo all the time. And I'm like, yeah, this is like what I like in a speedrun, like the really complicated like boss strats and stuff like that, where like you're doing all this cool stuff. And it was just the polar opposite of RE2R for me. I think the reason a lot of people weren't warm to RE3Rs because they didn't like the game casually, which like fair enough. A lot of people didn't like it as a speed run. A lot of cut or they didn't like it as a remake, I should say. Like a lot of cut content, like Nemi's, like there are very valid complaints to make about that game.
Sure.
But I judge games very differently as a speed run and as a casual game, because I learned very early on, okay, there's going to be a lot of games out there which are awesome casually. They're not that fun speedrunning wise. And there are some games where it's the polar opposite, where it's like, I don't care too much about this game casually, but the speedrun is awesome. A good example is Mirror's Edge. I replayed that game, and I did not care too much for the game, but the more I watched the speedrun, I'm like, damn, this speedrun is so awesome. Like, there is so much tech. There is so many complicated strats. The movement is so, like, complex. Like, it has such a steep learning curve, such a high skill ceiling. And I'm like, wow, I like just have mad respect for anyone who runs this game. It's so sick.
Yeah, Mirror's Edge definitely owns very hard. It's very, very cool. How about a game that you would like to speedrun, but you just haven't gotten around to it yet? You know, for time reasons, doesn't fit with what you're doing.
All right, there's two of them. The only reason I'm thinking about running these games is because they're two of my favorite games of all time. One would be Bloodborne. I would love to get into Souls speedrunning at some point. The problem, I don't want to do it on a console. That's the main reason.
But you said the one. You said Bloodborne. That's the one that you can't.
Yeah, because that's my favorite. It's one of my favorite games of all time. I like it so much more than the Souls trilogy, and I'm just like, but it's on PS4 though, and like I love playing that game, but like just running, like labbing, like practicing a game on console, especially one where you can't really make manual saves. Like we probably could if we had it on PC, and we could make all these third-party tools that would help us like lab the game, practice it much more efficiently. Well, you can't do that on PS4 because you're very limited in what tools you have. So I'm just like, maybe if there's a PC port, maybe then.
A few weeks ago, I had Matt Apocalypse on the podcast, and he had started out as a Bloodborne speedrunner and then moved on to Dark Souls 3. And Dark Souls, as you know, have just pointed out, has all that practicing quality of life that was absent in Bloodborne. He's like, I'm never going back to Bloodborne. This is too good. I
can't blame him. That's exactly. That's exactly that. Like, I may not like Dark Souls 3 as much as Bloodborne, but I can completely see why someone would want to speedrun Dark Souls 3 over Bloodborne. It's just there's several reasons. Not even just like the practicing tools. The fact that it's on PC just makes it easier to stream. Like way easier.
Oh yeah.
You don't have to like hook up your console or anything like that. It just runs better. It's just everything is so much easier when it's on PC. And just it's an easier game to practice. Yeah, because of those tools. Like I just cannot blame anyone for feeling that way.
How about a favorite speedrun? Now you've already mentioned a few that could be the choice here.
Yeah.
Favorite speedrun to watch that you have no plans to run yourself?
Ooh, I've been watching a lot of Pokemon speedruns actually recently, and I don't think I'm ever gonna run. I just cannot. I do not have that willpower. I've been watching Heart Gold, Soul Silver speedruns along with Fire Red, Leaf Green, and Sapphire, and because like those are all the games I played as a kid,
right?
And like the speedruns for those games are so sick, especially Heart Gold, Soul Silver, because of how I found out like how the manip works. Like, oh yeah, you have to like do all this very proper movement, and like you have to like open the menu at like this frame here to ensure that like your starter Pokemon has like the right nature and stuff like that, and like you have the right trainer ID. And I'm like, okay, that's sick. That is like really, really cool. That is like mad impressive. And like just the like I just think the sheer like because of how much RNG there is a Pokemon.
Oh yeah,
just like
so
with the
much
encounters, crits, what the enemy AI does, all that stuff is just like completely out of your control still. So like and these are long games too. Like Heart Gold Soul Silver is like 3.5 hours or something like that. Any percent, like that's any percent. And I'm just like, okay, to get through that like a 3.5 hour run, that it just takes some sheer willpower. So I could not do this, but I have like mad respect for people who do run those games, and I find them very enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, no, that's a solid. Especially, I noticed this too. Especially if you have other things going on in your life, doing longer speedruns can seem like an impossibility. Do you feel like you have an optimal time range for speedruns? Like, do they have is there a sweet spot for you?
Not exactly a sweet spot, but I say anything that falls within the 30-minute to hour 15 range is good enough for me. Anything within that is fine. Anything longer to that, I still start to become a little bit more uncertain. Mass Effect 1 is an hour and a half, like an hour and 31 minutes. It can be pushed to like an hour 28 minutes, I think, like optimally, but that's still pretty long.
Right.
And there's a lot of downtime. And I'm like, once you're past that hour 15 mark and my like hour 15, hour 20 mark, like that's when it's like, I don't know about this, But and like, I'm not super into like the runs that are like super short. On one hand, they're really easy to grind. On the other hand, you reset a lot because it's just like, like if you're ever watching like a Super Mario Brothers 1 run and you're like, you look at the attempt counter and it's like 30,000 attempts or something like that. That's pretty normal, I would imagine, for a game that's only like 5 minutes. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a certain point too. I think I agree with that about the shortness of it. Is that like I feel like part of the joy of speedrunning is just getting into the flow of executing and having moments of intensity, laid back moments, et cetera, et cetera. And when you're doing a 5-minute run, you don't really have that. You're just like, I'm done. Where am I?
Yeah, I like runs that are like I think just as a spectator too. Runs that are slightly longer just have like a much more roller coastery feel to them. You know what I mean? It's just like if you're running a longer game, like RE4 is a good example of that. Like you don't like a runner for that game as a runner. Like you're not really paying too much attention for the first like 40 minutes, I would say. But then if you manage to get a run past that halfway mark, everyone is like, oh, is this the one? Is this the one? And it goes on that way for another like 45 minutes. And it's just like, that is an experience right there. So I do think like the longer runs have their place. As both a runner and a spectator, like it's just a lot of fun to watch longer games like that.
Now, a question I have to ask, this is my last individual sort of game question. You've had the opportunity, I think, to do, what was it, RE4 New Game Pro, RE3 Remake Standard, and now you're going to be doing the Mass Effect 2 New Game, any percent. If you could get a freebie into a GDQ event, and that, so that's could be another category in one of those games, could be a different game, what would you put in? So we're going to get, Mike, we're going to give you a freebie. What do you want to put in the event?
I would think about doing Mass Effect 2 all mission screens. That is a 4-hour long run that I've only accomplished a few runs of. But that is a run where you do every single mission in the game, including all the DLC. You do literally everything and get the absolute best ending. And I think that is I think that's a pretty interesting run to show. Also because it is a 4-hour long run with like no downtime at all. Like you have maybe like a minute of downtime in that entire run for 4 hours. I think it is even though there's a lot of bugs and crashes that can happen, I think like it'd be pretty interesting to show that run.
Do you know if your current PB in that game, in that category, has crashes? Is that something that's just sort of baked in?
No, it didn't. It luckily did not happen in my PB. Okay. I finished my PB in that category is 3 hours, 59 minutes, 57 seconds. So it was close. Yeah, and like it luckily happened because no crashes or anything like that.
Excellent. No, that sounds great to me. As I mentioned before, I'm a fan of the series, so certainly, getting the best ending, especially Mass Effect 2, getting the best ending.
Yeah,
I don't think I had never really seen the bad stuff, like people die in Mass Effect 2, and I watched the speedrun.
As I've been running the games, people have been like people have like a lot of people have been doing like retrospectives about it because like Legendary Edition all that. I've been finding out a lot of people actually did have people die when they first played Mass Effect 2 because there's some stuff that is very easy to overlook, like the ship upgrades, for example. There's 3 of them that you have to get, and each one you don't have, one squad mate dies. Like, it's guaranteed to die no matter what.
Right.
And also, like, at the end, like, during the suicide mission, it's like you have to, like, assign people to these tasks.
Yep.
Well, like, the game gives you, like, a long list of, like, oh, yeah, you can put, like, any of these guys in this task. Who do you want to put? Well, in reality, there's only, like, 2 or 3 options that you can actually put. There's only 2 or 3 people who can actually do this task. They have to be loyal, and the person who you put for the other task also has to be the right person. And if you mess up any of that, somebody dies.
Yeah.
So I looking back on it now, I'm like, okay, I could see why that happened to some people. Like that seems like an actual easy thing to kind of goof on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I think my very first play of the game, I 100% intentionally sent Jacob to die. So sorry, Jacob. But
yeah. If you play Mass Effect 3, that is like the death you will be like the least sad over.
Yeah. Well, he's just like hanging out at like a facility in 3, right? Or something.
I don't know if you know about this. If you play Femshep and romance him, and then you get to him in at that part, he literally cheats on your character. So it's like, I don't know why they made that writing decision. Like, it just makes you hate that character even more. It's just like, why? Like, screw this guy.
Yeah,
like, wow.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
So something I wanted to touch about, moving away a little bit from the speedrunning, but kind of adjacent to speedrunning, as it exists, doesn't necessarily require people to be, capital S streamers. But a lot of people do that. A lot of people, achieve certain goals in terms of that. Some people go full time. And I did notice, I think it's somewhat recent, right, that you got Twitch partner. Right? Is that correct?
That was 2 years ago.
Oh, that was 2 years ago? I must be thinking of someone else.
Because I've streamed a lot of RE4 back in the day.
Okay.
RE4, if you're a top runner in that game and you have a microphone on, you're guaranteed to get a lot of viewers. That's just, that's just the way it is.
No, that's...
After RE2R came out, though, I started expanding past RE4 because I'm like, I don't want to be the RE4 guy. I'm just like, I want to like run other stuff, just like, and also not get bored.
Right. That's a question that I want to bring, because RE4, I think from what I've heard among, speedrunners and streamers, has, as you said, a reputation of being able to carry people to a partner level audience, but also has a reputation for having an audience that only watches RE4.
Yeah.
So
I would say
go ahead.
It's RE4 is probably the one that's most guilty of that, but it's not the only one. It's a little bit unfair to say it's only RE4. I think RE viewers in general, it's like, if you do anything that's not RE, it's like, I'm out of here. Like, I don't play any other games besides RE.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just it seems like a part of the challenge, right? To sometimes to evolve beyond whatever the initial draw is. Yeah. Certainly, I'm hopeful. I don't know. I'm not gonna dive into metrics. They don't want us to talk about metrics numbers. But certainly, I love seeing Mass Effect speedruns. So that's I'm down for that. Hopefully, that will be successful for you. I did want to ask though, because you have you mentioned your preference for PC gaming. But you have done some console runs. I mean, do you maintain like a lot of capture hardware? Is there any particular capture hardware that you use?
Yeah, I have an HD60 Pro. I think that's what it's called. Like, it's the PCI Express card.
Right. Okay. I have the same thing.
That's what I use. I think I only use that for Breath of the Wild, but I also stream some console games every now and then if I needed to. It's just a nice thing to have.
Sure. Oh yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. That is
a very useful thing to have.
A good tool. All right. Oh, here we go. This is an important one that I always touch on, which is gaming, especially speedrunning, has a lot of repetitive motion involved in it. Also can be very sedentary, sitting around. Do you do anything in terms of preventative measures for hand, wrist, back, whatever?
I'm not. I wish I did more of it. I do. I do not try to stress my hands too much. I did learn after a while, like one of the reasons I started going easier on RE4 is because it did start kind of hurting my left hand a little bit because you have to hold shift down on keyboard and mouse. You have to hold shift down all the time to run. Okay. There's no way of you can rebind it, but you have to hold down 2 buttons to run at all times, like the entire run, because there's almost no reason to ever walk in that game.
Right.
So it is a very, very important part, especially it's less it happens less, I want to say, on keyboard and mouse, because what I've heard is that like keyboard and mouse, your hands are resting on something. Meanwhile, with like gamepad, like you're holding an object for
Always
several
gripping.
hours at a time.
Yeah,
the gripping it, doing like a lot of like hand movement and stuff like that. That's where like a lot of the hand injuries can come from. That's why you hear so many like melee players, for example, start having hand problems after a while, because GameCube controller is just not like super ergonomic. You know?
It really isn't.
It requires like so many inputs like that are really fast. So yeah, if you're not careful, it is something very, very serious. So yeah, like I'd recommend anyone who is very much into speedrunning. I wish I did it more. I'm just lazy, but every now and then, like if I start feeling a little bit sore, I take 10 minutes to like stretch my hands and stuff like that before I start streaming or before I start running. I just like, it's something you got to do, because otherwise you're gonna have like arthritis when you're 40 or carpal tunnel or whatever.
Sure.
Like good.
No, I hear.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 33 and I can already notice like when I start to feel my hands, especially, and I right there with you, I think, in terms of your take, which is that controllers are more fatiguing than keyboard and mouse.
Because it's an object you're holding and you're gripping. But like it's a thing that happens on keyboard and mouse too. Like don't take that the wrong way. Just if you're going to be doing a lot of speedrunning, like several hours at a time, like multiple days in a row, it's just something you should do just for your own sake.
Now, before we move into talking about some of these individual games or series, I wanted to ask very broadly, do a big broad question. Is there a particular point or appeal of speedrunning for you? Because you mentioned grinding, getting top times, but you've also mentioned games where you were involved when they're new, routing them. It sounds like you've done work to improve the Mass Effect games, which aren't new games, but you're finding new stuff in them. Is there a particular, what's most appealing to you about speedrunning?
I think speedrunning is great, like mostly because it is the act of like pushing a single player game to its absolute limit, like just doing the absolute most that you can playing. I just like the idea of playing a game like perfectly, just like at the most optimal level. It's just something that's always kind of appealed to me, because like there's casually playing and then there's just like playing this like to the absolute best that it can be. I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain. It's just like that concept to me is just really appealing. It's just like it's sort of like a competitive aspect. It's like adds a competitive aspect to a single player game. But I typically only ever got out of multiplayer games, and sometimes I just thought like, what if we could like compete in the game that you only play by yourself? Because in speedrunning, you're really like, there's leaderboards, there's records, all that, but at the end of the day, you're competing against yourself. You're racing against yourself, and that's just it's the act of self-improvement. So it's just something I've always liked, because you focus more so on your own mistakes, on things you can improve on, rather than trying to emulate somebody else.
When it comes to that idea of playing the game optimally, now having watched you play Mass Effect 2 and Resident Evil 4, I know that you obviously are doing glitches in those runs, but I feel like that idea of like what is the optimal way of play, do you have any particular response? Because I'm assuming you're on board with glitches and speedruns pretty safely.
I am. This is something I've been talking about recently as RE8 has been routed, and I was kind of into that community for a little bit before I dropped it. Sure. And I think glitches are perfectly fine. I think like because a lot of people get the impression that like glitches are easy to do, and in some games they are.
Could be,
but if you're playing something like Ocarina of Time, it is way harder to play with the glitches. It's just like it's like a brand new like difficulty aspect to the game in that regard. So I usually find them appealing. It really does depend on a game to game basis. The reason it appeals to me in Mass Effect is because in Mass Effect 2, doing we call them elevators, like the elevator glitch, which like you strafe in a certain angle and that'll just push your character up.
Okay.
And then you have to do a melee abuse, which is where you do an individual melee and then you have to swing your mouse. So you're basically doing the melee animation in like a 180 arc, kind of like you're just like whipping back and forth to carry the momentum to get your character unlocked, basically, because they're usually stuck.
Right.
And that added like an entire new like movement component to the game for me. So like it would be kind of boring if it wasn't there, because like all of a sudden you're taking out like an entire aspect to the game, which like it's not free. You have to learn these angles that you have to strafe at. You have to like get the muscle memory to do melee abuses like correctly, because otherwise you're going to be messing up a lot. It just yeah, I don't know. To me, glitches are fine. It's a wholly new aspect to the game that you have to learn, kind of.
Yeah, no, I think that's maybe the best response, right? Is that, you know, depending on what it is, you just brought up a great example there with Mass Effect 2. You're learning a new skill. It changes how the run proceeds, but you're still doing, you know, most of the levels. You're still doing most of the game. It isn't, it's not arbitrary code execution.
All the game, One of the skips specifically is just dare to skip an auto scroller, which the more auto scrollers we skip, the better. You know, that's just we're doing God's work right there.
That's the most important.
Same with the minecart skip at RE4. So like we're just skipping a really boring part of the run. You know, and there's like,
God, it's so good.
This is pretty great. Yeah,
I love every time I get to see that. I've had a few. I think I've talked to a few people on the podcast. I know Waifu, of course, is one of them. And it's fun every time I see that skip. Always good. Well, let's talk about that then. That's an excellent segue. So, you know, we mentioned how you got into speedrunning. You started off with some things like Breath of the Wild, with Nier Automata, Resident Evil 4. How do you get into speedrunning that? How does that become? Because it sounds like you did it a lot. You did it for lots of years. You got a Twitch partner on it. Where does that begin?
Like my story, or like how someone could get in?
No, I mean your story. Your story.
So RE4, like most people, originally played it on GameCube. I actually never finished the game on GameCube though. I got really far into it before I just stopped. It was like one of those games I really enjoyed, but like I just kind of stopped. And then I got around to finishing it on Steam several years later. And one day after I like kind of dropped Breath of the Wild, I was like, I kind of want to do something else, but I still want to speedrun. This is fun. I just noticed, oh yeah, like I could do RE4. I really like that game. And I just like looked online, I watched a record, which at the time was 129.42 IGT by Morse. Like a good friend now, helped me out a lot. And I learned to run it on keyboard and mouse, because most people ran that game on controller back then. Most people still do, but I think back when I started running it on keyboard and mouse, a lot of people were telling me, "Oh yeah, you should just do it on controller." It's just like, keyboard and mouse is slower, and that attitude completely changed, because now the world record holder was the world record was done on a keyboard and mouse like a few months ago.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because so you know, I mentioned earlier I watched the what is that AGDQ 2020?
Yeah, AGDQ 2020.
Right.
Yeah.
So at that time, I think, you know, obviously you and Maxie went over some of what you just talked about, which was that it was uncommon to be running the game on keyboard mouse. And
just because go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that that I think at that time it was not true that the world record was fully on keyboard mouse, but instead that it was a mixture.
Yeah,
it was set. Most people are mostly playing on pad, and then for certain tricks, because it was discovered that certain things was faster to do keyboard mouse.
Several things in the run that are faster, like some sniper shots, because mouse is just OP for aiming. Just some menu stuff, like for the merchant menu, for example, you could scroll down using the mouse wheel, which was a lot faster than like pressing down on the D-pad. So a lot of people would just like a lot of pad runners would just like reach their hand over to their mouse and just like scroll down just to get the rocket launcher like a little bit faster. But yeah, it even with pad, controllers started becoming or keyboard and mouse rather started becoming more and more meta, as like we realized there was like all these little individual like minor things that were just straight up objectively faster on keyboard and mouse that like you could do to like get like just free time save, you know?
Interesting. I mean, that is really wild to me, because, you know, Resident Evil 4, super popular game, lots of people played it, and just to see that, you know, I guess you being stubborn about an input method led to, you know, discovery that some things were just, you know, I assume some of those things might have been known, like scrolling and stuff, but
the scrolling stuff was known, I think, before I started. Yeah, a lot of people knew about that, I think, but some stuff like the sniper shots, that happened afterwards. A lot of people, especially, I think I was the one who found out that you can rebind a zoom in, zoom out button on a keyboard and mouse, like to press a button instead of using the mouse wheel, and it would zoom in like instantly too. So a lot of people started doing that too. I think there was like a lot of like little tiny things that like were able to be improved upon thanks to keyboard and mouse for that game. I think like one of the main things that stopped people from running that game with keyboard and mouse, I was going to say this earlier, is just because controls are really bad. The default layout leaves a lot to be desired. Some of the key bindings are just baffling. Like for example, like some of the buttons that you use to go like in the menu, you can go from like one tab to the other. Like for example, you open your inventory, it brings up like the Tetris, the iconic Tetris menu, right? And you need to go to the treasures tab because you need to input like a key to unlock a door. Because if you just go up to that door, like while controlling Leon and just press the interact key, like X, for example, it'll bring up like this block of text, and it's really slow. So you can just avoid that by going into the menu, opening your treasure tab, and then inputting the key and open it instantly.
Okay.
And so, all right, I'm sorry, this is getting a little long-winded.
No, please. This is a podcast.
At the end of the day, even though I'm burnt out on it, like I love talking about RE4. RE4 is one of those games I love talking about. Like I can commentate a run on that like any day of the week and like just talk about so much stuff. And one of the keys on keyboard and mouse for going to the treasure tab was like I think delete or insert.
Okay.
Like which like are you serious? Like insert? Why insert? That's such a weird key. Like why? Like if you have a 60% keyboard, like what are you even gonna do? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just like a lot of stuff like that, and just the way the mouse, the camera felt with the mouse. It was like very, very sensitive, very unwieldy. A lot of mouse excel. So a lot of people don't really like it for those reasons, and just because you can't really edit any of that like in the game. You have to go to a separate file, like an INI file, and know how to edit it in order to change any of that. So I think a lot of people do get turned off because of that.
Resident Evil 4 is the one that had a famously bad original PC port, right? Where it doesn't even have mouse support. Okay.
Yeah, the 2007 port.
Yes.
We call it PC07, and it is a giant meme in the community because, man, if you go and look at screenshots for that game and then compare them to like the GameCube version, it is like a straight downgrade. It's like there's no lighting at all. It's like you're looking at the game from like one of the devs like computers, like you're looking at like an alpha build or something like that at like Capcom or whatever. But it's like the actual final build of the game, and it's like what the hell is this? You know, it looks so bad. And yeah, like you said, no mouse support at all for a game with aiming. It's like what? You know? If
I recall right, I think the default scheme is to aim using numpad, which is really truly Galaxy Brain.
Man.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, I
wanted
wanted
to very
good.
Oh, it's still, I should say, it's still a very popular port. I mod that game still on speedrun.com. We still get plenty of PC07 submissions and like people asking about like, oh yeah, can I run this game on PC07? I can't get it on Steam. And we're like, oh yeah, sure, but Steam is faster. But like, oh yeah, I'm just used to it. And like, they just run the game on PC07, and like with mod, because that game also has a ton of mods. That version has way more mods than the Steam version. Because I think the reason why is because it was so popular in Latin American countries as well as like Eastern European countries and stuff. Like just really, really popular, that version.
I mean, it's a good game, and then those countries, you know, are always underserved by consoles, so I'm not surprised, right? You know?
Yeah, because it's like basically abandonware at this point, so it's just like anyone can get it very, very easily.
Right.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about the that particular GDQ VOD I've referred to several times now. Was the sound effects for the Wesker Leon knife fight planned? Was that discussed beforehand, or was that just impromptu?
It was sort of impromptu, but honestly, reciting the dialogue from that cutscene is like just tradition. Just tradition. Like every runner does it at this point. It's just like if you're on a PB pace run, it's like almost like the law that you have to do a dialogue. Like it just. I remember whenever I was on a PC or I was on a PB pace for that game, if I did not do the dialogue, people would just be giving me like weird looks. Like, what are you?
Yeah,
you're not doing the dialogue.
Aren't you into it?
What? Yeah. Like, why are you not saying the dialogue? Hello? It's like just something you're expected to do, kind of. It's just, We all know, because that is the only cutscene in the game you cannot skip, like a very long cutscene that you cannot skip. So we have to watch it every single time. Luckily, it's at the end of the run, so it's like not a big deal. But still, we have seen that cutscene like hundreds, if not thousands of times. So it's just like ingrained into our skull. So like you just have to say it at this point. It's just like it's one of those RE4 traditions, you know?
Now, we've already mentioned a few examples of tech from this game, the breaking the Minecraft sequence, the minecart sequence. Why not Minecraft?
People have called it that. People have called it that before, so I don't feel ashamed or anything like that.
Do you have a favorite bit of tech or trick in the run?
Man, I can't say Ditman, because Ditman, for those who don't know, is a glitch in RE4 where you use the striker shotgun. It's probably the most well-known glitch in the game, where if you aim the shotgun and before the laser pops out, like every gun has a laser on it to help aim. If you open your inventory, like while you're aiming it before the laser pops out and swap to any other weapon, Leon will equip that weapon and then run at 1.5 times speed. So it's like, it's insanely useful for speedruns. And I think like that mechanic alone, that glitch alone, made the game so much more interesting to run. Because now it's like you have to get used to two different movement speeds, like movement styles in the game. And it's so weird because it's just like a completely different set of muscle memory that you have to learn. And in new game, you get it about halfway into the run. So you do one half of the run basically glitchless, and then the second half of the run you have to do with like a completely different like movement speed and like opening your inventory like all the time. It's like completely different. I don't know if that's not exactly tech, I would say probably, but man, if I could list it, man, I think it's probably my favorite.
That's right, because that also becomes the key. I mean, not obviously moving faster is good for a speed run, but that's also integral to some of the clips and things, right?
Yeah, well, not all of them. A lot of the skips we found recently work without Ditman, thankfully. It's just like you just have to like climb up a ledge at a specific angle and Leon will go out of bounds, or just jump. Like, for example, there's a second setup for the minecart skip that you can do without Ditman. The first one is only doable on Steam version with Ditman, with the TMP equipped specifically. We don't know why it's like Steam only. We thought initially it was frame rate related, like, oh, Steam is like the only one running at like constant 60.
Yeah.
And PS4 is like running at like 59 FPS or whatever. I don't think that's the case anymore because people have run the game now on PS5 and like there's no way that game is dropping frames on PS5. There's no way, and it still doesn't work. So I think it might be something to do with like how the physics of the game work or whatever. But yeah, there's like there's a second setup now where that was found like it was found after I started running, where it's like if you just like if you vault the minecarts, like the individual minecarts, like at a specific angle at the turn, like Leon will just jump over it and then go straight out of bounds. And you can do it that way too. So people have learned how to do that method now because it's very useful for console, and as well as the normal merchant run where you can't buy anything from the merchant.
Right.
You just use the base inventory. Yeah.
So that's an excellent segue for might be my last RE4 question, which is, you mentioned you played it a lot, played it for years, got burned on that, still took it to AGDQ 2020.
Yeah.
Do you have future plans for this? Obviously, you still like the game. It's still a favorite of yours. Would you go back for it for any reason?
Maybe I'd probably have to use like we allow macros in the run, like turbo. Excuse me. So long as it's used for the mashing QTs, because we found that there are several QTs in the game that are bugged at 60 FPS, like 60 FPS in general. RE games having FPS shenanigans is just like to be expected at this point. Like RE8, like they keep finding more and more stuff is like FPS based. Like I'm not surprised at all. It's just like, it's just Capcom things at this point,
Yeah.
Yeah. If I went back, I'd probably need to use like a macro or something because I do not want to hurt my hands playing that game. That game hurts my hands more than like any other game that I run, especially because you have to hold shift the entire time, which hurts on a mechanical keyboard after a while. The mashing, so I'd probably have to like swap around a couple of hotkeys, set up a macro, and like get the new muscle memory developed if I ever wanted to go back to that game. So maybe, I don't know. There's just other stuff I think that's more interesting right now in the short term, but who knows?
Yeah. No, I mean it's always one of the things I like to
Yeah.
ask too, because even if you didn't go back to the main category, you mentioned things like no merchant. I don't know if there's other categories like that that appeal to you, or you would probably just stick to the.
I like the Ada categories as well, mostly separate ways, which is like the side campaign where you play as Ada, just because Ada herself also moves differently than Leon. She's a little bit faster, not as fast as Leon with Ditman. She has her own weapons. It's like a different route because it's like a different mode. It's much shorter. I like that category as well. But yeah, I think NG Pro is always like just in my heart, just the RE4 category.
No, that makes sense. Now with we already talked a little bit about some of the tech for Resident Evil 3 remake.
Yeah.
In terms of how good the fights are and the dodging. But I did want to ask, was that a game that you were right in on the ground floor with? Were you speedrunning that right from the time it came out?
Yes, I was. Okay. I did not think I was going to. I kind of went into that game with like low expectations, which is part of the reason why I think I ended up enjoying it so much. Just going from RE2R, which I didn't have a lot of experience with compared to like the top runners of that game who put in thousands of hours.
Sure.
But going into RE3R, it was very fun to help route that game out. I don't know if I was the route like came very, very naturally for that game. There wasn't really much because it's a very linear game. Only the first part of that game is like kind of open ended, where like you can like in the downtown section where you can like kind of explore around, like go different routes and stuff. We were able to find the most optimal route like really, really fast. Just like beeline to the hose.
Yeah, just
beeline back. Yeah, go straight here. Like it's just like, okay, yeah, you obviously don't want to do really anything else. Just you want to completely avoid picking up anything that you absolutely do not need. So yeah, it was mostly just the tech that came in. Like we had the blueprint kind of from the get-go with that game. Just like as I said, it was a very easy game to route due to how linear it is. But just adding in those minor time saves, like, oh, we can dodge here, we can dodge this enemy this way, or we can dodge this enemy that way, or hey, maybe we can use like this weapon here to make like getting past this enemy easier. So it was mostly minor stuff like that for that game, not really anything major. It wasn't like RE2. Like part of the reason it helped was because again, like RE2R and RE3R are pretty similar mechanically, not like 100% like one to one, But so I think like a lot of the tech kind of just carried over, like stair skating, which is like where you aim on the stairs to like go up faster because you're canceling the stair climbing animation. It's stuff like that, like the turns where like you aim while you're at a corner, so your character kind of does like a 90-degree turn. We all knew that stuff coming in, so it was mostly just finding out how to implement the dodge mechanic into the run. That was like the actual tricky part, I would say.
No, and it sounds like that, thankfully the dodge mechanic had sufficient depth that it keeps surprising y'all in terms of what's available. It is very
surprisingly deep. Like we were finding out, like if you dodged at like a very improper angle, like let's say like a very obtuse angle or something like that, your Jill would kind of do like like we called it a baby dodge, where like she does the dodge, but the animation is like really slow compared to like if you do like a perfect 90-degree dodge, and it's kind of based on your camera. So like you have to be facing your camera like perfectly to get this optimal dodge here to like do this movement correctly. Like stuff like that was like slowly trickling in, and it just as the times got like more and more optimized. It was a lot of fun figuring that stuff out, just how deep this mechanic is, as well as like the proper dodge timings for like every enemy as well, because it's different. Like some enemies are just super, super fast, and on standard, which is the category I ran, new game standard, enemies were not as aggressive as they were with like Inferno and stuff. Like ironically enough, the dodges on Nightmare and Inferno are like way, way easier than standard, because they attack you from super far away, so the dodge window that you have is like huge, because like it's like the game just kind of detects that like they're lunging at you to try and grab you from like 6 feet away from you, so it's like you have a huge window to press the button, right? But on standard, like they will lunge at you from like 2 or 3 feet away, and it's just like, oh, you have to be like on top of that to get that. And we also found out that running in caution, so in RE2R, Claire, she runs faster while she's in caution, which is like basically you have like, it's the medium health state.
Yeah.
You've taken some damage. So her running animation changes and she runs faster. And it was the same thing in RE3R, but to a lesser extent. And we also found out, so not only does Jill run faster in caution, she also, the dodge window is bigger for some reason. We didn't know why. I think if I had to speculate, it's because probably the devs wanted to be a little bit fair to the player. It's like, okay, if you've taken some damage, we'll go easy on you or something like that. So we quickly went like, all right, you move faster in caution and the dodges are easier. So right off the bat, we gotta get the caution like as fast as possible. That is like the goal. So we found ourselves blowing ourselves up. We blew Jill up with a barrel like right at the beginning of the run, and that's how we got around that problem. And it's like, okay, now you just do the whole run in caution because it's like, why not? You know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's the state to be in. You know, a question I had about Resident Evil speedrunning as someone who has not done any myself, but you know, obviously I've talked to some people who are involved in different games in the series. And the thing that I've noticed, especially with these newer games, you know, Resident Evil 2 remake, 3 remake, 7, 8, is that people seem to gravitate towards the higher difficulty runs. And I was curious, is there like a reason for that? Is that what the people want? Do these runners find it better? Like, what do you have a take on why people were like, Resident Evil 8, let's go Village of Shadows? You know, I noticed the same thing has happened with Resident Evil 8.
I could be a little bit mean about this today. Yeah, the viewership
at your discretion.
Probably has something to do with that, because it's like, oh yeah, you could get 100 viewers, like let's say doing New Game Casual, or you can get 500 viewers doing Village of Shadows, even if it's a miserable experience.
Right.
Okay, which one are you going to do? You know, for a lot of people, that's. I mean, again, I don't blame anyone who does that.
Oh yeah, no, this is not
whatever.
Right, anyone's getting blamed, it's the audience.
yeah, you do you. It's your stream. Do whatever you want. You know, but for some games, there is a reason. So a lot of RE games have a mechanic called DA. You will hear that term tossed around a lot when you're talking about RE, especially new RE, like from RE4 onwards. And what it means is difficulty adjustment. And basically the games have a dynamic difficulty system that basically changes the difficulty of the game based on how the player is performing, right? So if you're performing worse, the game becomes easier. So enemies die faster, you do more damage. Some rooms will have less enemies in them. And if you're playing better, like, you know, you're not taking any damage, you're killing a lot of enemies, you're picking up a lot of items, etc., the game becomes way harder. So like enemies are super bullet spongy. They're very, very aggressive. They will just tank hits before they get staggered. You'll get extra enemy spawns. So basically every modern RE game has it. And how DA changes is not only based on like how the player is performing, but like obviously the difficulty, because RE games all have like different difficulty like options. So if something like RE4, for example, does have DA, I think it might have been the first RE game with it. The reason a lot of us actually play on Pro is because the DA is just locked at the max value. So in that sense, there is no DA. Like there is no changing difficulty. It's just like the game is hard through and through. Nothing ever changes. You don't have to deal with this mechanic at all. I was about to say dumb because I'm not a huge fan of that mechanic for speedrunning. Because fundamentally, when you break it down, it is the slower you go, the faster you go. And I hate that. I think it should always be the faster you go, the faster you go. You know?
It's like one of those things where I feel like the way you talk about it is that it's something that if you really, really play with it, you have to optimize it for it. And sometimes that means intentionally taking damage, things like that. This is kind of why I get mad about. I mean, I'm a weird stickler for time without load stuff, because I always feel like that incentivizes people to make more loads happen. You know, which to me can really be. I understand why people want it, is because they want to avoid pay to win hardware. I understand it, but like I can definitely think of some games where like, oh, I could just start making some more load times if that's what you really want. You know.
That luckily doesn't happen. It is kind of a problem with RE4 because we've eventually made a load remover timer that removes the inventory loads as well. So what that translated to was like, oh, we can open our menu and equip this item, and even though it's slower RTA, like you run faster with a grenade, for example, in RE4. So it's like, oh, you can swap to a grenade here to get that 4% extra movement speed, and that time you would have lost RTA is basically gone. So it's faster to do this now because that's how the meta shifted eventually.
Right.
But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that either. Luckily, with Mass Effect 2, there is a load remover timer, but the timer doesn't pause on like the menu or anything like that. It just pauses on loading screens.
Right.
And like the loading screens are kind of like just set in stone. Like they don't happen like mid mission. Like they just happen as you're transitioning from one map to the next. So it's like not that big an issue.
Right. All. It's not an issue where you're being encouraged to constantly get in the Normandy to create loads.
Yeah, exactly. It's just there as a way to like make the playing field a little bit more leveled, which I'm perfectly fine with.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, that's the ideal case, right? Like I'm agnowledging why people want to do this for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, back to that question you were asking about the difficulty stuff. So for RE4, it's because people don't want to deal with DA. That's the primary reason I would say people probably play on New Game Pro. But there are, man, I don't want to trash it too much, but there are a lot of people going like, all right, it's not the true pro experience though, unless you're doing no merchant, because then you don't have Ditman and you don't have any strong weapons and no rocket launch. And it's like, I don't know, some people just confuse difficulty in speedrunning, I think, a little bit too much with like speedrunning. It's like, it's about going fast. It's not about the difficulty. Really,
right.
You do whatever is fastest. That's the whole point.
And also, what problem do you want to solve, right? Like maybe solving the harder problem is fun, but it's fun on its own merits without just being for the sake of difficulty.
I think for some games, like I think this is the case of RE8, for example. A lot of people are gravitating towards Village of Shadows, and looking at it, I think it's because New Game Casual is just like a little too easy. It's just a little too, it is good for speedrunning, but like there's just like, I don't know, like just having like enemies die in like one hit or whatever, and then like enemies just don't seem to do anything to you at all. And there's just like no enemy spawns at all. It's just like, okay, this is like kind of boring. So what if we did Village of Shadows? And I think Village of Shadows is maybe a little bit too, in my opinion, is a little too extreme in the other direction, because then you have these like bosses like Lady D and Moreau who just like do not die because they have such an egregious amount of health. That because I'm pretty sure the difficulty was balanced around having New Game Plus items.
Right.
Yeah, even though like speedrunners have found ways to like tackle those boss fights, like for Moreau, they like place a bunch of. I think the way they do it in boss now is which is Village of Shadows. They put a bunch of mines in one spot, and then they get him to come down from one of the roofs, and the mines can hit his weak spot, which is like very tiny. So they just put it in the perfect spot. So when he comes down, his weak spot hits that perfect spot. Like 10 mines stacked in one area, and just like his health bar just like vanishes basically because of that. It's pretty funny to watch.
That's a good strat. That's solid.
But I think it really just, the difficulty in speedrunning really just does it's based game to game. For RE3R, a lot of people moved away from Inferno because Inferno had DA in it. It had like more DA in it than the lower difficulties, where like the lower difficulties were like locked, like hardcore, for example, is locked at 9, I think.
Okay.
And
there's like a ceiling.
It's it's kind of like RE4 MG Pro. It's just like locked at like this value right here, and it will not move. And Nightmare was locked at 10. And then Inferno went from 11 to 19, and a lot changed in that range. So I just think people didn't want to deal with that because it was just like kind of silly. It's just like, why is the hardest difficulty have, like, why are we taking hits intentionally so like we can actually kill this? It's kind of silly. And RE8 unfortunately kind of has DA in it, but I don't think it has it for boss, thankfully.
Okay, well that's good. It's especially with the amount of health as well, right? It's upsetting to deal with.
Yeah.
Let's move over to the other big series, to the Mass Effect series. I think when I asked earlier about, some big purchases that you made, you brought up Mass Effect 1 and 2. So you were a fan of that series right from when they came out?
Yeah. I think Mass Effect 1 I might have rented before I bought it. I eventually bought it, but my first playthrough was on a rented copy. I think it was from Blockbuster back when I was still around. Yeah, in the late days of Blockbuster. I played it on 360. I loved it. I played KOTOR back in the day, so I was no stranger to BioWare games. I loved KOTOR, and Mass Effect 1 gave me those KOTOR vibes, so I really, really dug it. It felt like a much more action-y version of that, but still, just it had that general spirit, and the universe was really, really interesting. And then, moving on to Mass Effect 2, which was like like a cover shooter, basically. I didn't really like it as much at first, but it grew on me eventually because I think the story and the universe were still like there. It expanded on them very, very well, and the gameplay did eventually kind of grow on me.
And then, of course, you got 3 when it came out.
I did not actually. I think when 3 came out, I hadn't played 2 in a while, and 3 and immediately as 3 came out, I heard about the ending.
Sure,
I was like,
oh, that was everywhere.
Yeah, I had it spoiled to me immediately. When I came back and played it recently for the first time, I didn't really remember the ending, thankfully, but I still had a very negative reaction to it. But yeah, I heard about the ending, and I'm like, oh, this sucks. Oh no. And I just like had no motivation to play it at all. I'm like, yeah, I don't know about this.
Yeah, that's extremely fair. But okay, then now compared to Resident Evil, which is just, bonkers popular, and also has had a speedrunning scene for a long time. We've mentioned RE4 by itself has a tremendous speedrunning scene.
The trilogy, the original trilogy of RE is still extremely popular. I think RE3 OG is like one of the most popular games on speedrun.com still.
But Mass Effect is in a different place. What made you think about picking up Mass Effect? I mean, 1 or 2 as speedruns?
Well, 1 is the nostalgia I had for them. Okay. I still had fond memories of them. I like just playing third-person action games a lot. That's just kind of my wheelhouse. I'm beginning to think. I'm just like, I really like third-person action games, especially if they involve shooting and stuff. It's just what I like. And I'm like, I remember Mass Effect and Legendary Editions coming out. Like, these games are pretty cool. I remember really, really liking them. And I replayed them, the OG versions first. And I'm like, oh, yeah, this is awesome. What does the speedrun for this game look like? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I could do this. And then, went on and got the record for 1 and 2 after that.
So was there, I mean, how much of a pre-existing scene was there? Was there a community, or was this like a situation where once in a while someone would come along, do some runs, and then move on, and there never really was a
it was
collective?
Kind of more similar to that. It's not like RE, which like RE people tend to just stick with RE. It's very, very tightly knit and just a lot of overlap between the games because a lot of them, have tank controls and stuff. RE, or Mass Effect, I mean, it was very different because each of the Mass Effect games just play so differently from each other. Like Mass Effect 1 and 2 just play like completely different games. Like Mass Effect 1 is like just a straight up an RPG.
Yeah.
So it appeals more to those KOTOR people, which and then KOTOR compared to like Mass Effect 2, for example, like different realms. And then you have like Dragon Age on top of all that. Like Dragon Age is like a completely different game. Like just so yeah, it's very, very fractured compared to RE because like RE, it's like survival horror, tank controls. Well, maybe not the newer games, but still like 1 through 5 is like all tank controls. So, it's very easy to transition from game to game. Like it's the same storyline, and just a much bigger community. Like it just has a bigger international fan base on top of all that. So going to Mass Effect was like pretty interesting because like, it's just like the community was not as big, which means the games weren't as optimized. But like there was still the route there. The blueprint was still there, thankfully. So it was just a very different experience because you're going into a game that like was not like just that people just had not dug their like claws into as much compared to the RE games, which like 1 through 3 people have like tens of thousands of hours in those games. I
noticed looking at the boards for Mass Effect 1 and 2, it seems like Mass Effect 1, all right, it's been a while. I mentioned earlier, it's been like 9 years since I played them.
Yeah.
There is some DLC for Mass Effect 1. Am I right?
Yeah, there's 2 DLC. One of them was not included in Legendary Edition, actually, because it was made by a different studio who apparently lost the source code. That's the story, apparently. So they couldn't put it in Legendary Edition, but nobody likes it anyways. They're kind of like the VR missions from the Metal Gear games. So like nobody... Yeah, they're kind of like that.
Like a simulation on the moon or something. I'm remembering this now.
It's called like Pinnacle Station. It's basically
Pinnacle
like
Station. The other one was the better one. Yeah, for sure.
Bring Down the Sky is one of the best DLCs in the whole series, in my opinion. That is like the story one. That one's awesome. We don't do it in the run though because it's completely optional. But if you're casually playing the game, it's a very, very good DLC.
Yeah, no, because I was noticing. So yeah, that's an interesting thing when it comes to your modern games. I'm gonna say like some some 7th gen and later is that especially in games where you have an inventory items.
Yeah.
Including DLC, it's not so much that you're doing the DLC missions necessarily, it's that you have the option to do them, and that may or may not make, getting to the credits faster.
Yeah.
Do you have
that is a big thing with Mass Effect 2, on the other hand. Like, the Mass Effect 1 DLC has no impact, no bearing on the run at all. But on Mass Effect 2, that game has a ton of DLC, like a lot.
Yeah.
Like, including 2 squad mates you get from DLC who, so in the game, you have to do usually like a recruitment mission where you have to do this long story-driven mission to go get this character before they like join your party. With the DLC in Mass Effect 2, Zaid and Kasumi, you just like go up to them and talk to them, and they immediately join your party. So obviously, in the run, we need X amount of squad mates to start the suicide mission to get to the credits. Okay, well, if we can just take out 2 squad mates, just go get Zaid and Kasumi like super fast because we just have to talk to them. That's obviously preferable to doing like, Tali's mission or like Samara's mission, which are really late in the game. It's like, oh yeah, that saves like 10 minutes probably.
Yeah, no, I noticed that. I was like, oh yeah, I guess we don't need Samara, do we?
Yeah, no. You don't go to Ilium at all, actually, and neither the any percent nor the good ending category. You don't go there at all. They're just not there. They're not in the game, basically.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah. So, do you have a favorite category? Is any percent with DLC new game? Is that the best category, or?
For a while, I thought it was the good ending category was the best one. It's just the most satisfying one because you're getting the good ending. Everyone's surviving at the end, and because it has more main story content. You're doing Tali's recruitment mission and a bunch of like loyalty missions, which are like the meat of the game.
Right.
Like, the best part of the game is like those missions where like it's just like a really interesting story where you're growing attached to like the characters and stuff like that, and like learning like what's going on at them and stuff like that. You actually get to do them in this category compared to like the any percent run where it's just you recruit everybody and then at the halfway point you just go do a bunch of like really short side quests. Because the way the game works is after you get about halfway into the game, you just have to wait for the elusive man, who's like your boss basically, to like contact you again. And it's basically on a timer where you just do 5 missions. They can be any missions at all. They can be a long story-driven recruitment mission, or it could be like this little side mission that you find with like a distress beacon that takes like 30 seconds to do.
Okay.
Which one's gonna be faster?
Which one are you gonna do?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So in that run, it's like halfway into the game, you're like kind of just like rushing the game really, really fast to like trigger those late game missions to be able to start the suicide mission, basically. So the good ending category is kind of a nice reprieve from that, because in that category, it's like, okay, well, after the halfway point, you still have to get one person recruited. You have to go do the loyalty missions to make sure nobody dies at the end. You have to get your ship upgrades and all that. So it's like a very, very different experience. And you also have to do a bunch of normally in the run, we only use Morden and Miranda because they're the 2 most OP squad mates in the game. Well, in this category, you have to run Tali, you have to run Jack a couple points, because if you don't, people die. So it spices up the gameplay a little bit, in my opinion, compared to any percent, where it's just like Morden and Miranda the whole way through, because why would you use anybody else,
Do you have, now watching this, we already talked a little bit about it. Like, I think you mentioned the trick for you call it elevators when you go out of bounds with the melee trick. Do you have a particular, I'm going to ask the same question I did with Resident Evil 4 for Mass Effect 2, which is, do you have a favorite bit of tech and your favorite skip maybe for Mass Effect 2?
Ooh. So Mass Effect 2 has a bunch of them. The one I'm thinking of the most, the one that's probably most notable is there's a couple. There's one on Horizon, which is like the main story mission halfway in. You can like just skip like half of that mission basically by going up these walls, because like the way the game is structured, it takes place on like a human colony on this planet, and you have to go through all these buildings. Well, there's like a window over here that has no window, like no glass or anything like that. So if you just like go up this little ledge and drop down, you just like completely skip having to go through like these 3 buildings. There's stuff like that. And there's also one where you go out of bounds in this little garden, and the game just freaks out as you're like basically walking on nothing for a little bit. There's a lot of really, really neat skips like that, where the game like just freaks out not knowing what to do, and then you load into the correct spot, kind of.
Yeah, no, you already mentioned earlier you skipped the one the auto scroller, which
that
was
one,
really fun.
That's the collector ship one. Yeah, that one. That's probably one of the tougher ones in the game, actually, because that skip is way harder than it looks because there is a very tight depth trigger around where you do that skip. So if you mess up at all, or you melee abuse, which is like where you again do that 180 whip to get off, to get out of bounds. Well, there's a chance your character might move a little bit to the left and hit that depth trigger. So you have to hit a very precise angle to not have your character die as you're falling down, basically. There's a lot of really neat stuff like that.
Cool. I'm looking for. I had a lot of fun watching just like the PB that from I guess this morning.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely looking forward to see, how it's presented in in an SGDQ format. I'm definitely very excited for this one.
We actually have an incentive, or I put down an incentive for the game to save the Normandy crew at the end, which is something we don't normally do in the good ending category. Even though we're leaving everybody in our ship to die, like so long as Shepard and like your squad mates survive, it's all good. So everybody else dies, and for the incentive, it's kind of like save or kill the animals for Super Metroid. Sure. We're going to be doing Morden's loyalty mission, and that loyalty mission is insane because normally you have to go into this compound and like fight through all these rooms. Well, with this out of bounds, we can do. We just like kind of go in from the side out of bounds, go up a ledge, and just run into the void basically, and go all the way to the end. And if that incentive gets met, we'll be doing that in the run.
Awesome.
That's going to be very fun to show people.
That's exciting. Yeah. Definitely. Certainly too that you can show off, one of the loyalty missions that has a really cool skip like that in particular is just very, very neat to do. All right, let's start heading towards the eggs in the script. The way this is going to work, I got a few questions to sort of wind up the formal script. Folks, I'm going to take. I will be taking. Folks are here with us, taking questions, some live Q&A, if desired. But first, one of the things I like to do is get a question from my previous guest for my next guest. Since this is an interview series, I mentioned earlier my previous guest was Heinke. And Heinke had this question. He didn't know who it would be before he asked this. But knew it would be a speedrunner. And asked, if you could go back in time, what would you do differently to approach speedrunning? And he offered a few specific examples in terms of changing your approach to speedrunning, streaming, or how you submitted to marathons.
Yeah. That's a tough one, actually. I think something I probably would have told myself before is don't be surprised if it takes you a while to improve at a game. You're competing against, in some games, you're competing against people who are very, very experienced, thousands of hours. It's going to be rough. But don't let that discourage you. Just keep going at it. You'll eventually get there. You'll close the gap eventually if you just like dedicate yourself to it.
Yeah, that's solid advice too, because it is a matter of time and experience, and we all budget different amounts of time, and just because some people might be able to get out ahead of you, if you want to close that gap, you can. You just have to stick with it. Right? Does mean that I do need from you a question for the next guest. I'm not going to tell you who it is. Question can be about anything. I've had music questions, food questions, whatever. Yeah. They will be a speedrunner. Do you have a question in mind that I could pass along?
This is something I've been thinking about recently. What are your thoughts on casual, as I like to call it, speedrunning versus competitive speedrunning, where you're aiming for, like, you're sweating, aiming for them records, aiming for, like, a top 5 time or whatever, versus, like, just speedrunning for fun? Is there an overlap maybe between the two? And like, which one, is there much of a gap to begin with? And where do you think you fall on that spectrum?
All right. No, I like that. That's I'll be curious actually. So I always spoil it right after. So I'm gonna DM you. I'll be curious if you know this person. They're a top runner in a few games. I think the one they're most known for is this one, this game. So
I played that game before, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that game has cool tech. I'm gonna be excited to talk to this person next week. I'll announce who that is pretty soon. So that will be fun. The person I'll mention now. The person's from Australia. Always fun to schedule interviews with people from Australia.
Yeah, middle of the night for him probably.
Yeah.
Or,
well, it's like because I usually do either Thursday night or Saturday morning.
Yeah.
And so for them, they're like 12 to 14 hours ahead. So it's like, are you available on Friday morning? And then it could be my Thursday evening, or kind of depends. So, but people are good about it. People have been, things get worked out eventually.
Yeah.
All right. How about, are there upcoming games that you've got an eye on that you're excited to play?
Ghostwire Tokyo probably, because that's the next Mikami game coming out. My boy Mikami. So I'll probably be playing that. Besides that, my two biggest anticipated releases were Village and Legendary Edition. So
that makes sense.
I don't know what else to look for on the horizon, really. Well, we got E3 in like 2 weeks?
Yeah, that's the thing. There's more stuff coming. I definitely I have some studios I've been keeping an eye on that I'm like, what is the next game they're working on? And Square Enix confirmed that Eidos Montreal will tell us what they're doing. I don't know if that'll be Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, or what, but
for me, it's like Prime 4 win.
Breath of the Wild 2, Prime 4,
Breath of the Wild 2 is that going to just be in limbo for forever now?
What's going to happen?
Yeah.
So I mean, understandable. A lot of these things got delayed, but
there was a teaser for Mass Effect 4 a few months ago.
That's true. I forgot about that. Oh,
and
man.
Then people keep talking about like RE4 remake. Is that going to be?
Wasn't there a VR version?
Yeah, it's Oculus only. There's going to be a VR version for Oculus, which I probably won't play because I don't want to buy an Oculus just for that.
Was that the remake that people was rumored, or was there a different?
We don't know exactly, actually. Because if it is, I think a lot of people are going to be kind of disappointed because it's like,
well, that's what I thought. I was surprised people were still talking about RE4 remake because I had assumed that an Oculus version would have been like, this is what it was. No one wants to get an Oculus, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know.
I'm trying to think of other examples. Like, I'm big on. I love Elder Scrolls Oblivion. I'm not huge on Skyrim, but still, I'm excited to see what Bethesda's up to. I always am. And I had one more in mind, but I'm not remembering correctly right now.
The one I want is Monolith Productions. That's the studio that made like Fear. Other games like that, and more recently made the Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War games. They got to be doing something, and Warner Brothers is going to be at some conference. This is the publisher that owns them now.
Yeah, they're just getting bigger and bigger, especially due to like the Arkham games. So
definitely. Yeah. So we'll see what happens with that. Hopefully it'll be fun stuff. That's really all we want. We like video games. We play for fun.
I'm just looking for something fun. Yeah, always.
How about some shout-outs? Who should have more eyeballs on them? Whether that be Resident Evil runners, Mass Effect runners, any runners. I mean, shout-outs to whoever.
All right, well, for RE, a lot of people I like. Pessimism, my boy, the goated RE1 runner, like RE1 remake. Waifu, very good friend. Maxi. Trying to think of more. Dist, always cool talking to him. Bach, really cool. Like, all these people are great. There's a lot of really good people in the RE community. For Mass Effect, I got to give a big shout out to Jade. Jade, she previously moderated the game. I think she recently removed herself, but she is the author of the speedrunning mod that we use for the game. She made a bunch of other mods too. She made the FOV fix mod for Legendary Edition, actually, that got released first day, that a lot of people downloaded who don't even know that she made it. Like, she makes a ton of really awesome mods for Mass Effect, and also found a lot of the skips in Mass Effect 2. And Letters, he's going to be couching for me for Mass Effect 2. He's a great, phenomenal runner of BioWare games. Really cool guy. And yeah, I can't really think of who else right now, but if I'm missing you, I'm sorry. A lot of really cool people out there.
Don't worry. I mean, again, plenty of great people. One of the things I'll say too is that, in my endeavors doing this podcast, I was always disappointed by, this is going to sound like I'm throwing shade at people.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of speedrun interview podcasts were sleeping on horror game runners in general. You know, there's a lot of very popular, very fun to talk to horror game runners that for whatever reason just don't get interviewed in the same way that Mario runners do. And, you know, I'm happy to step in there and try to, you know, talk to people and get their story. So.
Yeah, man, like the RE community's like huge. It wouldn't be nearly as popular without them, kind of, because you know, like sure, like the Nintendo speedruns are great, but you gotta look elsewhere. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's not any shade either against, you know, those. Well, there's one I can think of I'd throw shade at, but besides that, you know, no shade. You know, most of them, you know, for playing, you know, a fun game at a high level. There's nothing wrong with that. How about, where should people find you? What should they be looking for from you?
Yeah, I think you have it down there, twitch.tv /Mike__wave. That's 2 underscores. 2 underscores. I cannot get the one without the underscores, unfortunately. I've tried to remove them, but they've become iconic at this point. And my Twitter, which is also the same thing. Just look up me there. And yeah, those are the 2 main places that I'm at. If you ever want to chat with me or send me a message, or, you know, watch me do runs. Yeah,
so if you're here with us live, I just dumped those into the chat. If you're listening after the fact on YouTube or Spotify, iTunes, or wherever, you can find the Twitch and Twitter links for Mike in the show notes. So please, you know, go follow, go enjoy. I know I definitely enjoy having, like, I don't, do you usually stream at like, well, I guess it would be evening hours for you, like late night West Coast for you? Is that normal?
I used to, recently it has been. My schedule is kind of all over the place. Sometimes I'll go back to streaming in the afternoon, though. I do like streaming in the afternoon as well, though. But I've kind of found DGen hours to be kind of comfy for me. But yeah, I sometimes like to stream in the afternoon, though.
Okay. No, I mean, DJ's going to be hard for me, you know, but as I said, I mentioned, you know, last night I caught like the first 30 minutes.
For everywhere NA, but then I end up having a lot of EU viewers.
I've noticed that. I've noticed a lot of EU friends are like, oh, I love watching, like I'm thinking of other West Coast DJ Hour streams, like Ecdysis or someone like that. He's on very late. So, no, that makes sense. So anyway, follow those. I'm going to need one more thing from you before we try and field some questions from the chat, which is that I am going to use a cheesy catchphrase like, let's boost on out of here. And when I say the cheesy catchphrase, I want you to give me your best rocket engine noise.
Okay.
Excellent. Folks, thank you so much for listening. Let's boost on out of here.
Yeah, that's kind of a farting noise, but
good. You know, you did it. That's perfect. I mean, I've gotten. I mean, you know, you remarked earlier I've done a few of these. I've gotten a full gamut of responses for that, like slide whistles. Actually, I had someone pull out an actual slide whistle. I think that was Boyks who did that. Yeah, who you know.
So that man came in prepared.
Knew what was going to. Folks, if you have questions, dump them into chat. I had a question that I didn't want to ask in the made script in case you wanted to pass on it. But I think of everyone that I've talked to on this podcast, which I've only really been doing during the pandemic, you have the tidiest room of anyone. Is that
hotel room?
Is that Is that what is going on there? Can you talk about that? Are you just tidy?
Your room looks pretty tidy too. I will say.
To be fair, that's clean sheets. All right, it's not normally like that. I promise.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I just make my bed every day. That's it. And I don't really have much else in my room. I mean, I have like a TV. I have like a bunch of books over here. You can't really see them.
Sure.
Yeah. I've thought about adding a Twin Peaks poster in the background at some point, but I don't even want to frame anything at this point. I just like the hotel room has become like such a meme at this point that I don't really want to move away from it.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I honest to goodness, I think I caught part of that Resident Evil 3 run live, like, you know, when it was the SGDQ run, and I was like, maybe this dude doesn't stream normally and he needed to go to a hotel room. I honest to goodness thought it was a hotel room, and now of course I was preparing for the interview and I was like, that's not a hotel room, that's totally just his room.
Yeah, I just like a big bed that I make every day, and that's it.
No, I respect it. That's good. Yeah. That's a solid. You mentioned earlier you mentioned in the DM you got some puppers. Do they ever appear on the stream?
My little one, she usually she'll just hop on the bed and lay down and sleep there while I'm streaming or something like that. If I'm at the house by myself or whatever. We have 2 dogs right now.
Okay.
And the little one will usually, she likes to sleep in my room, so she'll just like hop on my bed sometimes, like make cameos.
Cool. No, that's solid. I'm always a fan of the pet stuff. I kind of lean into it a bit. All right, we got Archie. First, we are on the front page of SRC for another good 6 or so minutes. So if you got a question or two, let's get him in there. All right, here we go. Archie's asking only the hottest discourse question here. The SRT question. I'm gonna assume you know this. I'm not gonna read the background sends here, but what do you think of it? Would it be better to have an uninformed and blinder run, or is just having this utility fine? Like, do you have a take on this particular utility?
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with the SRT. Okay. So here's the thing. Here's the whole thing with the SRT debate has been the SRT has been just controversial for a while now.
Yeah.
I mod several games now, and something you have to understand when you're approaching the whole SRT thing. SRTs are amazing for labbing, practicing, all that. It is like essential. There is so many mechanics we would not know about in the game without the SRT. Like for RE8, for example, they found immediately for the Lady D fight, if you get her health below like 70% or something like that, and then she flies off, she just gets, like, if you did any more damage past like that 70% mark, she just gets her health back. So it's like any weapon, like any ammo you use past that is just like completely wasted. And for some other stuff, like for RA2R, we found with Birkin on G2 that it's the boss you kill with like the crane, where like you smash the cargo container on him and stuff, and that kills him. You cannot kill him with like bullets. Like, you have to kill him with the container. There's no other way. I think it's a pretty badly made fight, in my opinion. I think that's kind of stupid. I think you should be able to kill him normally with any weapon. But we found out with the SRT really fast, okay, you can't kill him with normal weapons. You have to get him to 49.9%. And then, because the cargo container does 50% of his health. And we also found out with RE3R that the G3, or not, why am I calling it G3? Nemi 3, when he gets shocked by Carlos when he's running onto the containers or whatever, he takes exactly 20% health. So the SRT, invaluable for blabbing mostly boss fights and like DA related stuff. So here's the thing: should it be allowed in runs? Yeah, because you are getting information that like is not in the game, like accessible to the player without that tool. So here's the thing: the main problem with like going like, all right, let's say like, all right, no SRT allowed. Well, people are just gonna run it off on the side. Like, you know, it's so like, it would just be like, okay, how do you know if this person is like using an SRT or not if you were to outlaw it? Because like any one of a brain would just immediately go like, okay, well, they said it's not allowed in the run, but I'm just gonna like run it on my second monitor over here and just not show it on stream, and there you have it. And like, it's like, how do you prove this person cheated or whatever? So it's like, I think at some point we just figured out, okay, whatever, just like let people run it, just show it on screen if you have to. Just it just makes it like it's a free tool. Like, I don't know. I guess it goes against the ethos of speedrunning, I guess. But I've grown more open-minded, especially with Mass Effect 2, where we use the speedrunning mod, which increases the FOV of the game. Skips like a certain interrupt, so FemShep is not slower than male Shep, for example. Like, I've just accepted that like some outside tools and mods are just gonna overall be better for the run. You know,
I've definitely become very deferential, I would say, to if a community, if you want to play a game this way, and it's not like you know, it's you have to buy SRT or something. You know, it's just
it's not
just
a paid
the
tool. Thankfully, it's a free tool made for by the community for the community. Yeah, anybody can use it. Yeah,
to me, it's almost like down patching. You know, it's like it's just something you're putting on there. We got a few questions from Magi here. How about any favorite keyboard layout or any preferences? You know,
No, I'm a WASD gamer. Have been since I was like 12. So I'm not a huge fan of 60% keyboards. I tried moving to one not too long ago, but I like my mechanical keyboards big. You know,
I have too many games that require a numpad. Both GTA Vice City and True Crime New York City both require a numpad, so I just can't. I
you literally can't even move unless you were like go like I don't know if those games have an INI file or anything like that. You can edit like it was just like
Vice City. Vice City you probably could, but
it'd just be too much of a hassle though. It's just like I don't want to do this. Just get a keyboard and it has all that. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite type of trick in speedruns or
man, I'm not sure. I do like a lot of the dodging stuff in RE3R. Like chain dodging in that game is it feels so good when you do it. And I don't know. I don't even know if Ditman's probably my favorite glitch of all time. It's just literally you go faster. It's just simple. I like that,
No, that's good. Well, I got one final question for you then, which is we should have a raid target. Do you have someone that I could send people here to?
I would need to look at my following list real fast.
Yeah, no, go ahead, do it. Well, while you're looking at your following list, Archie did the one at. Oh, did you? This is my fault. You did a Devs React video.
Yeah, so IGN contacted me.
Okay.
They wanted to feature my Mass Effect 1 run before Legendary Edition came out with reactions from the devs. Yeah, and that was an awesome experience. It was something I've always thought about, like how would the devs react to my run? And it was very funny watching their reactions. I think one of the devs who was reacting was a programmer on the original game, and he knew about the for example in Mass Effect 1 we do a trick where we save and then load the save, and our character gets teleported to the top of the skybox, and we fall in the perfect angle so Shepard lands inside the Normandy. You go from like one map to the next without like avoiding the elevators and the dialogue and all that. Your character just teleports straight in, and he went like, oh yeah, we put a Normandy at the bottom of the map. It was just like just seeing his reaction to that, like, oh yeah, we did that.
Yeah,
I can't believe we're using that. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it was a great reaction to see.
Also, I just pasted that video into the chat there in case anyone needs it.
It's a fun watch. I don't know how much longer he's going to be. You know what? Here, let's go ahead and raid Mondo Mantra. He's running Resident Evil 2. I don't know how long. Well, let me check real fast to see how long he's going for.
Okay.
I think he was like already doing runs before we started, so I don't know if he's going to be going on for much longer. We could also do one more person I have in mind over here. You know what? Actually, let's go ahead and raid Diamond Doges. I'll go ahead and like link you his URL.
Sure.
I haven't been in his stream too often, but he seems like a really nice guy, and he's doing Resident Evil 1 remake, which
nice.
is my favorite Resident Evil, by the way. Casually speaking, my favorite.
Yeah.
Like, one of my favorite, like the best survival horror game ever made.
Yeah, no, it's a good one. It's definitely hella good for sure. All right. Wait. Oh, is the stream starting? Is that what it is? Okay.
Oh, is it?
No, I opened it up and it's just face cam.
Oh, really? I would still do it.
Yeah. All right, we'll do it anyway. Yeah. Folks, thank you so much again for giving me all this time. I'm gonna go ahead and let you get back to your day. Hopefully, I will lurk in some of your streams. I love Mass Effect, so I'll be around for that. But it was very good having you on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me as well. Appreciate it.
Have a good night. Take care.
Yeah, you too.